Don't Depend on Daddy is an unfiltered safe space, empowering young professionals to build independence in their 20s and beyond, whether it be personal, professional, or financial. Regardless of your age, relationship status, or job title, the most consistent person in your life is you. So join me and let's build our independence together. Enjoy! Hello and welcome back to Don't Depend on Daddy, the podcast. My name is Michaela. I am your host, and today we are going to be talking about how to start shifting your routines and keep your dopamine levels and mood high as we get into these colder and darker months. Before we get into the episode, which I am very excited about, let's very quickly run through our usual housekeeping. So first things first, as always, you can get $10 off the personal finance dashboard when you use the code podcast1. This is a podcast exclusive code. It applies to the PFD only. And if you are new and you don't know what the PFD is, the Personal Finance Dashboard, it is my signature money management tool. It's a tool that has helped me grow my net worth from negative $30,000 to over $1 million. It's exceptional, in my opinion, and in the opinion of thousands and thousands and thousands of other people, for an overall comprehensive picture of your finances. So you can go in there and take a financial snapshot. It walks you through all the steps, build out your annual and monthly budget. It's fully customizable. You can monitor your financial goals, your net worth, pay off your debt, all the things. I'm currently working on the enhancements for the 2026 version, which if you buy the PFD, you get the updated versions for free. So highly recommend checking that out. You can use the code podcast1. I also have a video tour of it on the sales page, but I'll also link it up in this YouTube video as well. If you are watching on YouTube, hello. Next is the basic budgeting template. So if you are someone who looks at the PFD and you're like, whoa, this looks like a little bit too much for me based off of where I am right now, I would recommend checking out the basic budgeting template. It's a more simplified version of the PFD, really, where I pull out the budgeting aspect specifically. So you get the expense tracker, you can get in the habit of tracking your expenses and tracking your numbers, and then you get a monthly snapshot of your zero-based budget and some analytics there. So I recommend checking that out if you are newer on your financial journey or you're looking for a budget-specific tool. And lastly, the newest template that I have is the Financial Independence Planner, my FIRE planner. And what this tool is a calculator that will run your annual spend and save targets to reach different retirement numbers. So if you are someone who wants to retire in your 60s and you're not sure how much you should be saving for retirement, this tool will help you calculate those numbers. But also, if you're like me and maybe you want to pursue a work optional life, then this will also help you identify how much money you need to put towards certain things in order to reach those targets. So I think it's a very simplified tool compared to what is available, because when I was calculating my FIRE numbers, I couldn't find anything that prescriptively showed me exactly what I needed to do in an easy to understand way. And so that's why I built that. I built it for myself first and foremost. And I think it's a very, very valuable tool to add on to either the PFD or the basic budgeting template. So those are the templates in housekeeping. Oh, I also want to remind you or let you know that in about 2 weeks, depending on when this episode goes live, the Black Friday sale for all of my templates, my annual Black Friday sale, is going to be happening. I am going to be putting everything on sale for 25% off. We're going to have a handful of different bundles, so you may be able to get a little bit of a higher discount if you've been waiting to buy more than one of my templates. I'm going to be also running a sale on my end of year masterclass, my 2026 planning masterclass that I'm going to be rerunning this year with a bunch of different live sessions. They're all going to be recorded. More info on all of this, what to expect, is going to be over on my Instagram page, my Break Your Budget Instagram page specifically. So if you've been waiting to get a template and you can wait another 2 weeks, I would recommend holding off until the Black Friday sale, because that's where you'll get the most bang for your buck. But if you're listening to this outside of Black Friday 2025, then you can use the code podcast1 for a little money off the personal finance dashboard. Okay, so as I mentioned, we are back for another routine episode because we just had the time change. And I know that this time of year can get really tough really fast. I actually love the winter time change personally because I love staying home, especially at night. But I do think once we get past the holidays, it can become really draining, especially because it does get dark so early and it's so disruptive to the evening routine, especially if you're like me. Like, I love going on my post-work walk, so I'm really bummed about the time change. It shifts what I do pretty dramatically. So today I'm going to share a bit about how I change my routines, especially during the winter, as well as some dopamine hits and things I do to just keep the vibes up during this time of year. Because I will say, even more so now that I'm in Chicago, and this is going to be my second winter in Chicago, it obviously gets cold here, very, very cold. And I definitely experienced a little bit of seasonal depression last year, like just between the transition from moving from California to Illinois, big change, especially, Los Angeles to Chicago, very different cities, very different vibes, very different lifestyles, adjusting to making new friends and re-nurturing relationships, acclimating to a new city, a new routine, a new space, all of it combined with the super cold weather, like it was definitely challenging for me. And so now that I'm going into my second winter and I know what to expect, this year I am taking some more precautions, and I'm going to talk about what those are here. So how this episode is going to work is I'm going to explain why our dopamine dips in the winter. I did a little bit of research on this, so that's going to be more of a scripted part of this episode so that I don't misspeak. And then I'm going to go through my menu of things that help me boost dopamine, and then I'm going to talk about some of my routine shifts during this colder and darker season. So with that, let's get into it. So we're going to start off here with understanding what's actually happening with your dopamine and circadian rhythm during the winter. So generally speaking, for many of us, your motivation and your mood drop during the winter time because the winter affects your dopamine and serotonin systems, both of which are essential, obviously, to how you feel motivated, focused, happy, and content. Less sunlight leads to less serotonin and dopamine because sunlight regulates your body's production of serotonin, which supports your mood stability, while dopamine drives motivation and reward-seeking behavior. So when light exposure drops, we have earlier evenings and it's darker longer. Both of these decrease, which is why winter often can feel really flat and uninspiring. Your circadian rhythm is also disrupted because sunlight is the body's main time cue. That's why they say, like, when you wake up, the first thing you should do is go right outside. And then when you're going to bed, you want to turn the lights down because it helps with your circadian rhythm. With shorter days, your circadian rhythm and internal clock shifts, and you may feel more tired during the day, have trouble waking up, or crave like carb, sugar, or unhealthy food, which are all attempts to create short-term dopamine boosts because we're feeling a little whack and off. And then on top of that, your brain is seeking equilibrium to sort of even out the reduced dopamine and disrupted circadian rhythm. So when you scroll or you find you eat more or you're shopping more during the winter, it's not necessarily a lack of discipline. It's your brain really trying to self-regulate by finding these hits of dopamine to counteract the lack of environmental stimulation. So if you find that during the winter time, you're reaching for your phone more, or you're just feeling generally down, like it really isn't you. A lot of it is environmental. And so when you are aware of this, there are things you can do to sort of stay on top of it. So dopamine is anticipation, not necessarily happiness. It spikes when you're pursuing something like a goal, a project, or a new purchase, not when you've actually achieved it. So in the wintertime, your brain gets fewer natural dopamine rewards like sunshine and movement and social energy because it's not light out. It's usually pretty gray, at least especially here. You can't exercise as much outside. Like I find I still will get my steps in, but I don't enjoy it as much doing on the treadmill. And people tend to hibernate a little bit more in the wintertime. So you might be spending more time alone. So instead, your brain is looking for synthetic dopamine hits. So caffeine, scrolling, online shopping, sugar, novelty, things I just talked about. These give you that quick spike, but they do cause a crash afterward, which leads to the cycle of, I feel unmotivated, let me do something quick for a boost, and then you feel worse, and then it repeats and repeats. So think of dopamine as like a thermostat almost for motivation. In the summer, it runs a lot more steady because your environment feeds it with stimulation and sunlight. But in the winter, the external inputs tend to drop, so you have to manually generate your own internal cues. So let's now shift a little bit to the science behind this seasonal shift and the impact here. So when you think about the darker evenings, melatonin production increases earlier in the day because it gets dark a lot sooner. So you start winding down earlier, and why when it turns to be 7 o'clock, for example, it's like, why does it feel like 10 o'clock? It's because your body, your circadian rhythm, and the hormones that you're producing are naturally shifting earlier in the day because the sun goes down so early. Cortisol, which is your natural energy hormone, peaks later. So in the summertime, you might wake up a lot more energized because it's light out earlier. And in the winter, your cortisol response is delayed. So mornings can feel a little bit more sluggish. It's why having like a hatch alarm clock, for example, where you can get some sunlight and some brightness without it being like the bright overhead lights, can be very helpful for getting up and out of bed during the darker winter months. And then your baseline dopamine tends to go down. So you might feel a little bit broken, but it's not because you are, it's just because your baseline level of motivation is temporarily lower. The goal is not to spike it back up unnaturally, but to ultimately smooth out the reward system through small, consistent behaviors that build momentum. So why knowing all of this is so important is because if you understand the biology of your body, you can stop moralizing your energy levels and calling yourself lazy or undisciplined, and then just start adjusting your environment. So maybe that means I need to introduce more light, I need to get a light lamp, or I need to introduce some more structure into my day. You can also really get clearer on the fact that winter is not necessarily a time to push through. It could just be a time where you have to restructure your dopamine sources and ultimately intentionally design micro routines that mimic the environmental cues your brain is missing. So movement, light, novelty, structure, and social reward. So with all of this in mind now, let's pivot towards some of the things that I will be doing this winter to help with regulating my dopamine. So first is light exposure, because light exposure can help you regulate your mood. So you want to make sure that when you wake up in the morning, you get daylight as soon as possible, ideally within 30 minutes. So this could be opening the blinds, going outside, going out on a balcony if you have access to one, even if it's just for a couple of minutes. I actually have in my apartment, which are a blessing and a curse, a really big windows, like floor to ceiling windows. Fabulous for making sure that I get sunlight all day because I face south. So my unit gets sun all day long. Really challenging when I'm working because my desk, the only place to put it, is up against the window. So sometimes I have to move because it can be hard to see. But I will say, last winter, having a really bright space and really making sure that I was getting light throughout the day did help a lot with mood regulation. So the goal is to get light exposure as soon as possible. If you are living in a really gray area, which I can completely relate to now because Chicago is very gray for a very long time, you could also consider a light therapy lamp. So 10 to 15 minutes in the morning, that can help mimic sunlight and improve your energy. I also would recommend that you get a hatch alarm. And I know that people are like, hatch alarm, like too expensive, whatever. I've had my hatch for many, many years. It's fantastic. And you can change the light settings to really brighten up your room in the morning, which I personally find to be really valuable because I don't really love like overhead harsh light, but the hatch has a nice warm glow to it, and it does actually mimic a sunrise and natural morning waking patterns, which I do think in the winter is very, very helpful. So I would recommend checking out if they're having any Black Friday sales during, this holiday season. They probably will be. And if a hatch is a little bit out of your budget, I do know that Amazon makes some dupes, but I'm in the camp of buy it nice, buy it twice. I definitely think it's worth the money. You don't have to get the subscription or anything. I don't use the subscription. And I genuinely think that it will make a difference for you in the wintertime. And the last thing here related to light exposure is to shift your evening light earlier so that you can just go to bed earlier. And then that will help you wake up earlier and kind of shift your circadian rhythm to be a little bit more early in the day so that you can maximize the daylight and take advantage of earlier evenings. So how I do this is after 7 o'clock, I don't use any overhead lights. The only light that I'll turn on in my apartment is the under sink light in my bathroom, and then the under the cabinet lights in my kitchen. And that gives me just enough light where I can obviously see what's going on without it being super harsh. I'll also light up my candle warmer and I'll turn my hatch light on, and it just sets a really nice glow and zone to my space. And so it will help me bring down the energy, bring down the vibe, start producing melatonin, and get into a nice sleep rhythm. Highly recommend turning off the big light and getting some mood lighting or some low dimmer lights for the evening. I don't use red light glasses. Some people use these and find them to be very helpful. I wear glasses at night, like for my vision, so I can't also wear red light glasses. But I would also consider getting those if the light and the blue light and really dimming the tones of the evening is something you're interested in. Okay, next is making sure that you move every day, but redefining what working out looks like for you in the wintertime. I don't necessarily dial back my workouts in the winter, but I'm less rigid and more flexible with my schedule because now I go to a gym, and I know in the wintertime that going to that gym and walking there, if it's too cold out, like I'm just not going to do it. So I'm becoming and planning to become more flexible with the schedule. The goal is to aim for consistency, not intensity. So rather than approaching your workout or going to the gym as I either need to go to the gym or I'm doing nothing at all, you can instead incorporate or have a backup plan with more winter-friendly movement if maybe you're feeling like it's too cold or you're not in the mood or you just don't have the motivation. It could be getting a walking pad for your apartment. It could be getting some at-home Pilates or stretching tools. So a yoga mat. I have some bala bangles and I have 3-pound weights. So if I'm not in the mood to either go downstairs to the gym or to walk all the way to the gym, I know that I can pull out my yoga mat in my apartment. I'll move my coffee table and I'll do a little workout and a stretch at home. It always makes me feel better, even on those days where I'm not feeling super motivated. I use Form for my at-home workout. So highly recommend that even on the days where you're not necessarily feeling it, you try to get something in because the movement will make you feel better. The other thing you can do here is start stacking dopamine with your movement. So you can pair it with something rewarding, whether that be a podcast, your favorite playlist, maybe a cozy drink or a little treat afterwards. I think using it as a reward can be very helpful if you really want to motivate yourself to get into a consistent routine or stick to your consistent routine over the wintertime. And the last thing here related to movement, well, actually I have 2 more things, is to anchor it. So I have a very anchored workout schedule where in the morning I walk at the same time. I do the same amount every day. In the wintertime, I will be getting up and going downstairs to the gym and walking on the treadmill on the days that I can't walk outside. It's part of my routine. It's part of who I am. I am someone who walks in the morning, and it totally changes the way you approach working out because it's part of your specific routine and you'll feel off if you don't do it. So I anchor my walks in the morning, and then in the evening is when I do my strength training. And again, I'll either go to the gym or I'll do something in my apartment building gym or in my apartment because, again, in the wintertime, we're a little more flexible. So I highly recommend choosing an anchored time of your day to do your workouts because otherwise, if you go based off of your mood and how you feel, it'll be a lot harder to get it done. I also think the morning time in the winter, you have challenges in the morning and the evening. Like it's cold in the morning to get a workout in, but I think that winter workouts in the morning, you have a better chance of getting it done because in the evening, especially after a long day of work, like it's a lot easier to just come home and want to sit on the couch. So I would recommend anchoring your workout in the morning in the winter if you can. And then the last thing here related to movement and just wellness, I would say in general, is to add in some more regular wellness practices. So That could be sitting in the sauna if you have access to one. I tend to go into the sauna a lot more in the winter time. I would say like 3 to 4 times a week, as opposed to in the summertime, it's already hot. I'm already sweating. I don't really want to go in there. You could also get a sauna blanket. I don't have one. We have a sauna in my apartment and then also a sauna at the gym. So I will be doing that. It could be sitting in a hot tub if you have access to one, more stretching in the evenings or in the morning, and really incorporating a stretching routine into your fitness routine. And then also relaxing as part of my fitness routine. Like, fitness doesn't necessarily have to be hard workouts all the time. It could just be an unwind walk. It could be incorporating some more chill wellness practices into your routine. Like, honestly, I can imagine there will be days in the winter where I replace my workout with a sauna session and I'll sit in the hot tub. Like, that's totally fine. I think that's part of the season and really making the effort to redefine working out in the winter, make it a little more approachable, a little bit more warm, a little bit more fun, and you'll be more consistent with it. So highly recommend redefining working out in the winter and focusing more on consistency as opposed to intensity. Okay, next, routine anchors. So we touched on routine anchors a moment ago, but I do think that having some very consistent routine anchors can help create predictability in your day-to-day. Winter thrives on structure, okay? If you want to excel over the wintertime or just generally feel good, you have to create structure. I feel like the summertime, it's a much more go with the flow period of the year. You have way more time in the day, way more sunlight, obviously, more spontaneous plans. Winter is a really great time to kind of like buckle down and create those routines. I honestly think of like January to March as the year's built-in time to hibernate and relax. So think about some of your rituals throughout the day and how you can really anchor them to create that structure and predictability. So your wake up ritual. I've talked about my morning routine 1,000 times. I post my morning routine every week on my Instagram page. I always stick to the same routine. It will stay the same in the winter with the exception of the location of my walk, depending on the temperature and the weather outside. I get up, I open my blinds, I go on a walk, I come back, I make my coffee, I clean up my space, I take a shower, I do my skincare, I get dressed, and I sit down at my desk. This is my ritual every morning. When I don't do it, I feel different. I even do it on the weekends because it honestly makes me feel so much better. So really curate your wake up ritual. And again, if your routines and stuff in the summer look different, think about how you can shift them a little bit into the winter to make them feel more approachable. Maybe that means you dial it back a little bit. Like, I walk 3 miles every morning outside. If I'm getting on the treadmill, I might only walk for 30 minutes. So that's totally fine, but I'm still getting it in as opposed to this all or nothing mentality. And I do think that that anchor is very helpful for feeling good during the day. Next is like a midday ritual or a midday reset. So that could be stepping outside for some fresh air, or I always like to spend or like take 10 minutes in the middle of the day. I'll go out on my balcony if it's not freezing out in the wintertime, we'll see. Or I'll go downstairs to the gym and I'll do 10 minutes on the treadmill, or I'll use it as my time to go down to the mailroom and get some packages and check my mailbox. Just getting out of my space for a sec, even if I'm not venturing very far, I have found is very helpful. Or I'll do a quick little tidy, or I'll take my lunch with a book and or a YouTube video and I'll step away from work for a second. It's very helpful to disconnect for a period of time if you're able to in the middle of the day. And then lastly is the nighttime slowdown. So we talked about this, but like really thinking about how you can ritualize your evening. So for me in the wintertime, it's my favorite time for like self-care, body care, really like amplifying my self-care routine, and the evenings in the winter are ripe for that. Like, tell me what's better than getting out of a hot shower, lathering up your body in lotion and putting on a big fluffy robe and some slippers and drinking a cup of tea. Like, literally, it's the best thing ever. So I love doing that in the winter. I'll do my skincare, I'll take my time. I've been putting my phone away, reading my book, having some tea. Like, it's fabulous. And I feel like because the nights start so much earlier in the winter, like, I'm doing this at like 7 o'clock. And so it feels so good to be in bed, relaxed, showered, ready to go early, again, for shifting that circadian rhythm and waking up. And so now, because I've been doing this for a little while, like I genuinely look forward at night to making a cup of tea and sitting on the couch and reading my book. So definitely think that figuring out what your nighttime evening anchor is can make a huge difference in your dopamine and your mood all winter long. Especially too during the holidays, like a holiday tea or a holiday book, or maybe it could even be like a little bit of holiday decor, like some lights in your apartment or a little mini Christmas tree or something. Like curating the evening vibe is an art, and it does make a huge difference, a huge difference. So curate the vibe, set the scene, and don't be afraid to like add in a little something something. So that could be a nice little teapot or a tea set or your favorite winter holiday mug or a cute pajama set. Like these kinds of things do make a difference. And honestly, in the winter when we're all scrounging around for dopamine, like the everyday little luxuries will enhance your experience. So if you want more about everyday luxuries for the winter, this is actually a great podcast episode. I'm going to write this down. Everyday luxuries for the winter is going to be a topic that I discuss. We're doing this live. Okay. I'm going to do an episode on that. I think that that's a fantastic episode. So let me know if you have a suggestion or an everyday luxury for the winter that you love, drop it in the comments and I'll include it in that episode. Okay. Moving on to, sorry, I lost my spot here in my script because I don't want to forget to do that. This next layer here, which is creating intentional micro hits of dopamine. So natural, sustainable dopamine boosts to incorporate all throughout the winter. That could be listening to upbeat music. So something I do in the mornings now is when I come back from my walk, I put Spotify on the TV. I'll listen to my day list if it's a positive one, but if it's not, I'll put on Harry's House. I'm obsessed with Harry Styles. I've said this a few times. I know I'm the last person to this party, but I love him. And whatever it is, his music puts me in such a good mood. And it just really curates the vibe in the morning. And so, again, every little dopamine hit helps in the winter time, especially if it's a gloomy day. So curating an upbeat playlist. A creator who I really like, her Instagram handle is Ashley Page. She has tons of Spotify playlists and she's like the queen of setting the vibe. Highly recommend following her, especially over the holidays. Like I know her content is going to pop. So definitely recommend following her for like these little dopamine hits, curating the vibe, playlist, that kind of thing. Another thing that I like to do in terms of micro hits of dopamine, setting micro goals for the day and crossing things off my checklist. Part of that has been getting a journal and a notebook. And so like sometimes when I have a lot that I need to get done and I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed and it's kind of slowing me down, I'll create my to-do list, I'll write it down on paper and I'll cross things off that I've already done. Like I'll put things I've already done onto the list because that really helps with motivation and just sticking to the schedule, especially too as you get later in the day when it's dark out and you're working, it's like 4:00 and it's pitch black out and you still have an hour or two left of work. Like that kind of thing really does help. Another thing that we've talked about in a previous episode that you really loved is decluttering. So that could be decluttering a drawer or decluttering a part of your closet or decluttering under your bathroom sink. This is something that I recommend doing over the winter before we get into the new year because it will help you start the new year feeling really fresh. And then another one could be doing something new each week. So that could be trying a new coffee shop, taking a new route on your walk, anything new, because novelty in small doses can help re-inspire you, which we all lose our inspiration during the winter. Okay, so those are the little things that I recommend doing in order to help regulate your dopamine. So just to summarize, we talked about light exposure, we talked about moving daily and redefining your workouts, we talked about routine anchors, and we talked about intentional micro hits of dopamine. A few other quick things here before we move on is to consider doing a dopamine fast. So that could look like not scrolling on your phone after 7 p.m. at night. This is what I've been doing. It's literally the best ever. I replace my scrolling with reading. And I have a couple of different books that I've been reaching for. It could be, again, curating your environment, keeping things calm. People always ask me how I keep my apartment clean. I just don't have a lot of stuff, and everything that I do have has a place. So when I'm done using it, I put it back, and it just helps maintain my apartment to stay nice and clean and uncluttered. And then also, like, I just accept that the winter is a little bit slower, and I'll sort of adjust my work schedule and my rhythm to more like of a deep focus and maintenance mode. So If I'm in the zone with work, I'll batch do creative work. If I'm feeling kind of down, I'll focus more on admin. Like, I know that not everybody can do this, but I guess my point is do your best to sort of shift your days around based off of the pace of how you're feeling. Because if you force things, I think especially during the winter, that's how we all end up feeling really burnt out. Okay. So I'm going to shift here now to the way that my routines shift during the winter time, which I feel like is a little bit dramatic. Like during the winter, obviously we have less sunlight, which means I go outside less, which is really hard for me because, as I've said 100 times, I love doing my walks outside, and not being able to go outside either because it's cold or because it's dark is really challenging. I'm still in the process of figuring out what my routine is for now because it's still kind of early into the shift, but here's what I've been doing that's working for me. So I have been going on longer walks in the morning, and I'll be doing that at least until it gets to be like super, super cold out. Because since I can't get out for my walk after work because it's dark, I want to get an extra mile in the morning and just extend my morning routine a little bit. I'm totally fine with this because since it's dark earlier, I don't necessarily feel rushed, like there's a hard deadline to stop working. What's interesting is in the summertime, and I feel like late summer into the fall when it starts to get darker earlier, I do feel like I need to stop working at like 4:30 because I want to be able to get out and get another walk in or get to the gym and get my workout in before the sun goes down. Where now, since that's already happening, I'm fine to work a little bit later. And for example, if I'm going to the gym, my gym has a co-working space. So like I will go and work from there in the evening, and then I'll just walk home on a main road in the dark. So like it's just a little bit of a different shift. I don't feel as rushed to stop working earlier during the winter time because it gets dark in the middle of the day. I do find that I tend to work a little bit later as well in the winter, which I think is totally fine. Like for me, the winter time is really a heads down, deep focus work mode. It's also usually my busiest time of year because it's like we're in Black Friday. We're starting the new year, January. Like people are really focused on their finances during this time of year. So it's just a time where I tend to work a little bit more, and I'm honestly totally fine with it. I look forward to it. Next is I shift my strength training to nighttime, which honestly, like this isn't really super new, but over the summertime, I was doing my weights in the morning. But since it's dark out, I'm not going to waste any of the daylight doing weights. Like I'd rather spend workout time that I do during the day outside on a walk. Any workout before 4 p.m. is going to be outside if possible. And this could also be like my walk to the gym. Like I'll do my weights and strength stuff when the sun goes down, and that's what works best for me for the sake of consistency. Next is I shift my bedtime earlier, and I've actually been slowly doing this over the last couple of weeks to get into bed by 9 o'clock at the absolute latest. I found that getting the extra hour of sleep really does make a huge difference for me in terms of my energy and how I feel the next day. I've been tracking my sleep with my Aura Ring. I am going to do an Aura Ring update. I just have not had it long enough to give like a full recap, but shifting my bedtime to be about an hour earlier and getting the extra hour of sleep, I think makes the biggest difference. And it's especially important, again, in the winter to feel rested and use the time to rest. And then lastly is I do take an intentional lunch break over the winter time. I feel like in the summer, I kind of just like have the windows open. I'm in and out on my balcony. Like my schedule is not as rigid, but since it gets dark so early in the winter, I don't want to feel like my whole day I missed the light and I never had a chance to get outside. So I will usually around noon, sometime between noon and 1, take about a 30-minute break and either go on a walk around the neighborhood if maybe I couldn't get my full long walk in the morning, or I'll go sit out on the balcony if it's not too cold out, and I'll just take that intentional time to see the daytime and like get out of my space for a sec. So those are all the things that I do to shift my routines in the winter. I will provide more updates as we get deeper into the winter, just because I feel like it hasn't been very long since the time change, so I haven't gotten into my full rhythm quite yet. But if there's any material shifts, I will let you know. I'd love to hear as well in the comments if there is anything that you do during the winter that helps you keep the vibes and your motivation and your dopamine high. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to leave me a review. Make sure to follow me on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. And if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you next week.